who has worked going back to the Reagan administration in Republican White Houses and Republican federal administrations, and so he provides this outsider president with some inside knowledge.
Again, the story is a story tonight because the news media entity put it out, but the president, in the minutes before meeting Kim Jong Un, tweeted out the fact that Larry Kudlow had suffered a heart attack and had been taken to Walter Reed, so we all scrambled to find out his condition. We are happy to receive Bob's reporting that his wife is painting his condition as having improved. Robert Costa, national political reporter with the Washington Post, thank you very much.
And to the point that you were just raising in terms of where we have just recently seen Larry Kudlow, I mean, it is... We're watching this happen right now as we speak. President Trump is in there one-on-one speaking with Kim Jong Un. I mean, within 36 hours, right? We've had this administration say there is a special place in hell for the Canadian Prime Minister, and it's an honor to be meeting with the dictator of North Korea. And we are going to have a terrific relationship.
Yeah. Well, Face the Nation yesterday was just what we were talking about. Yeah. That was a very hot show. Face the Nation yesterday, with Lawrence making that really over-the-top sort of defense of the president, and you could see the stress in his face. Yeah, I don't think he was comfortable playing that part, but he was a bit of an attack dog there for the president, as Robert just said, Robert Costa. People are so often forced to play the part of very, very aggressive defenders of the president.
Can I just say that I know you're not a fan of Bush foreign policy, but we never had a fight with Canada. I mean, it's really hard to make Canada. I'm sure you're not a fan.
Countries in the world.
It's very hard to have a fight with Canada. You have to work at it. They're very good friends and neighbors.
Very polite.
I think it was General Hayden who tweeted on Saturday that every time he has been of his country in any capacity, there has been a Canadian alongside him. Right. I mean, they serve alongside Americans in combat. It's very hard to get Canada, France, the EU, all of our best friends mad at us at one time.
While also being very honored to meet with Kim Jong Un.
On the eve of this summit.
Right. By the way, they were alongside us in Normandy. I think we should remind ourselves of that. At Spear Beach. But I think it's interesting. There's a case of not knowing what you're talking about. Trump has to understand, when dealing with the Canadians, you're dealing with all these sectoral issues. With all these cedars, shakes, and shingles is a big issue with the. I worked for this over the years. They have particular sectoral concerns about agriculture and stuff. To a smaller country than us, they matter to them. They have to cut them very specifically. In fact, Churchill once said about British farm economics, we go macro, let's make a big deal, let's sweeping decide these things. And the Canadians have to be careful in what they protect in their industries. And I don't think Trump understood that. It's
understanding the specifics. That's a given. He doesn't understand the specifics about anything. The idea that, I mean, and again, I say this to you as my friend, I know you're not a Bush foreign policy fan, but we never botched a summit in Canada or Mexico. This is low-hanging diplomatic fruit.
And you know, here, we're all accustomed to living with the reality show, right? So this happens yesterday, he's fighting with the Prime Minister of Canada, today he's meeting Kim Jong Un. Around the world, right, they don't have the luxury of just indulging in, you know, what's the fight in the United States. They are looking, if you're sitting in Europe, or you're sitting in Tokyo, or you're sitting in Seoul, or you're sitting in Beijing, you're looking at a situation where the President of the United States of America is picking fights with our closest allies, inviting Russia back into the G7, calling Kim Jong Un an honorable guy. Like, this is something that is going to change the foreign policy calculations of all of these countries.
And friends and allies.
But the president is not, I don't think, the only way I disagree with you, my dear friend, on this, is that I don't think it was a botch. I think that the president went to the G7 with the intent of blowing it up. That's why he was late to everything. That's why he had the arms crossed. That's why he was being rude to people. And then as soon as he was away and didn't have to say it to their face, he blew it up on the flight to North Korea, because there's something going on with our president. He's all of our president. There's something going on with him where he thinks it is to his advantage for this spectacle he's created right now in Singapore to have blown things up with Canada and with our closest allies heading into it. What I don't understand is how he thinks it's going to work. Nobody else thinks it should work that way. Everybody else, to him, this is all on purpose. So why does he think that sets him up well for this?
And the bill will come due later. The thing about foreign policy is it takes months or years for the consequences to become clear. We count on these people in a crisis. When there's a terrorist attack, when we need to launch a military intervention, when we need to counter ISIS coalition, when we're trying to put together a non-proliferation agreement. We count on Canada and Europe to be with us, Japan, South Korea. He's making it that much more likely that they're not going to be with us in a pinch the next time that we need them.
Why does he want to seem we are alone in the world and don't have any alliances before he goes and talks to North Korea? Honestly, in terms of his own thinking about it.
But we want to look tough, and that's the message to the North Koreans. I am such a tough guy. Even with Canada, there's no ally.
Even my friends hate me. I'm so tough.
He's on Twitter after he left.
Yeah,
he couldn't stand up to Justin Trudeau to his face.
But I mean, I don't think we should discount the idea. It's not a coincidence that this is precisely what Putin desires, right? I mean, are we just chalking that up to coincidence? Putin's desire is for the United States of America to have this much distance between America and England.
So what are you saying? What are you saying?
I'm just saying, I mean, do we think it's a coincidence that he's doing exactly
is it?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't believe in coincidences anymore.
Well, that's what prosecutors don't believe in it either.
This is precisely what Vladimir Putin wanted an American president to carry out, a foreign policy that alienates us from our closest friends and shoves us closer to our adversaries.
Putin's getting the greatest return on Putin's investment in meddling in the election took place this week at the G7. But also, Trump has been habitually more comfortable with authoritarians, whether it's Duterte in the Philippines, Erdogan in Turkey, Putin in Russia, Xi Jinping in China. He's consistently praised them.
Hostile to NATO.
Hostile to NATO.
Why aren't we friends with countries like our own? We value democracy, we value free press, we value free speech, and all the rights of people. And these countries agree with us on that stuff. All the countries in the G7 are like us, and the ones he wants to be friends with, Russia and North Korea, are not like us. About basic human values.
And he insists that Russia should come back into the G7. Russia, who has an economy the size of Spain, which is not a democracy and which was thrown out for good reason, he wants them back. Putin today said that he'd be happy to host the G7 in Moscow, except he's not sure he wants in anymore because he's got a good deal going on with China now that maybe is better than the G7 anyway. Putin doesn't want America to have the foreign policy that we have. He also doesn't want the West to have any cohesion so that he can reform the international world order with his own pitifully country operating and punching above its weight as a foreign power, a foreign superpower.
And pick off European countries from, our Atlantic alliance into his orbit, get the objective ever since the protests in Ukraine that led to the annexation of Crimea. I was there when President Obama called him to tell him that he would not be in the next G8 meeting. Putin was not happy about that. He hung it all on the fact that he said that we were behind the protests in Ukraine that led to the ouster of Yanukovych, when in fact they were people protesting on behalf of anti-corruption and democracy. Now we have a president of the United States who won't even speak up for democracy around the world. Not a coincidence when you consider what Vladimir Putin has been doing since those protests in Ukraine in 2014. He developed an information warfare capability that he used in Ukraine, and then he brought it into our election. And as we've heard most recently from the DNI, Dan Coates, he's going to do it again in the midterm elections and the next one. And that's why this week, this convergence of events is really bigger than even just this summit tonight. We're seeing a kind of reordering of what the role is that the United States plays in the world that we're going to be dealing with for many years to come.
Well, tonight, the lengths to which the staffs of 43 and 44 went to keep the peace with Canada. Seems so quaint and dated as of this past weekend. Listen, the two leaders are talking. That's why you may have talking on our end. This was from earlier. Cameras have been expelled from where they are. We're going to slip in a break. Obviously, if anything comes out of there, we will hop back in and go to Singapore. Otherwise, please stay with us. Our live coverage continues just on the other side.
We are going to start with something different tonight. This is one of those things that you have not been otherwise hearing about in the news, but stick with me.
Feed your mind with fresh perspective. Get Rachel and your favorite MSNBC shows now as podcasts.
And we welcome back Gary, who's already won 3 cars, 2 motorcycles, a boat, and an RV. I would not want to pay that insurance bill.
Oh, I have Progressive, so I just bundled everything with my home insurance. I'm saving a ton of money.
We love you, Gary! You don't have to buzz in. It's not a question, Gary. On March 1st, 1810.
Frederick Chopin.
Collapsing in 226.
The Colossus of Rhodes.
Louise Dustman.
Brahms' Lullaby or Friegenlied.
When will it end?
Not today, Ron.
If you feel like you spend too much time in the bathroom with recurring constipation and belly pain, talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Yes, Linzess treats adults with IBS with constipation or chronic constipation. Linzess can help relieve your belly pain and lets you have more frequent and complete bowel movements. Linzess is not a laxative. It works ahead of your recurring constipation and belly pain. Do not give Linzess to children less than 6. And it should not be given to children 6 to less than 18. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. So say yes to help for recurring constipation. Yes to help for belly pain. Talk to your doctor and say yes, Linzess.
Billions of mouths, billions of problems. Morning breath, garlic breath. There's a TheraBreath for you. TheraBreath Fresh Breath Oral Rinse instantly fights all types of bad breath and works for 24 hours, so you can breathe easy. There's TheraBreath at Walmart.
With Expedia, you can book a flight, hotel, car, and activity all in one place. Everything you need to go. Expedia.
This is Frank.
What's up?
This is Frank's favorite record. This is Frank's record shop. Frank knows Northern Soul, but how to set up a limited liability company?
What's that mean?
Not so much. So he turned to his friends at LegalZoom.
Yep, they hooked me up.
We help with his LLC, contracts, and some other stuff that's part of running a business. So Frank can focus on the beat.
You hear that?
This is Frank's record shop, and this is where life meets legal.
I feel really great. We're going to have a great discussion, and I think tremendous success. We'll be tremendously successful. And it's my honor, and we will have a terrific relationship, I have no doubt.
President saying that we will have a terrific relationship, no doubt, predicting a tremendously successful discussion and saying it is his honor to meet with the dictator of North Korea. That one-on-one meeting, no U.S. president has ever acceded to the North Korean demands for a one-on-one meeting with the U.S. president, but that meeting is happening right now. While we await the end of that meeting to be a more extended bilateral discussion, we're going to bring in NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, who's been watching tonight's proceedings from Seoul. Richard, what can you tell us?
Well, people here have been watching this very, very closely. If you think it has been an emotional roller coaster watching President Trump's foreign policy, particularly regarding North Korea, from the United States, it has been an absolutely wild ride in this country. People have so much at stake here. They feel that their lives are being debated in real time. 6 months ago, there were protests on the streets here in Seoul. I was in the middle of the protest. People were calling President Trump a warmonger. They thought he would evoke a war with his rhetoric with North Korea, that North Korea was demonstrating its willingness to have a war every time it launched another missile or blew up another nuclear weapon. And people here thought that Seoul was potentially going to get destroyed and that hundreds of thousands of people in the city were going to get killed. Now they are watching handshakes, the two leaders sitting down, appearing like normal leaders. I was surprised to see Kim Jong Un sitting in that seat, fielding questions from pool reporters, shouting out questions at him. That is not the of North Korean leader that people in this country are used to seeing, that people anywhere in the world are used to seeing. Back at home, back in North Korea, the leaders are treated more like gods, able to field questions.
This is a live picture. Let's listen in.
Mr. Kim, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir?
that sound and listen again and see if second time around we can make out more of it.
Mr. President, how's the meeting going so far, sir? Any progress, Mr. President? Can we nuclearize? Mr. President, how's it going so far, sir? Very good. What do you think? Very, very good. Chairman Kim, will you denuclearize? Mr. Kim, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir?
I don't think Kim Jong Un is used to the voice of Jim Acosta of CNN on a regular basis. We were listening along with you, straining along you to hear that, including the question, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir? Sumi Terry, you, President Trump, say fabulous relationship?
Very, very good.
You said very good.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Excellent relationship. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it's superlative day.
Yeah.
So what is this, a progress party? They're going from room to room? I mean, or is that a proof of life?
Actually, that was a pretty long, long one-on-one, right? You know, we were talking earlier about the fact that they were in there with no note takers, no national security officials. That, you know, I can tell you, you know, even when you would have the one-on-ones with the note takers, generally they'd be 15, 20 minutes, you know, maybe half an hour. And then you'd have a larger group present for the meeting. To have 45 minutes, 50 minutes, just those two men, they're the only two people who really know what was discussed in that room. You know, that's very unique for these types of...
And we should say what's happening now is that the one-on-one has just happened. Again, as Ben was saying, just President Trump and a translator and Kim Jong Un and a translator. They're going to an additional meeting, which will be both leaders again and extended staff. Yeah. And we'll have a number of administration officials there. What's the purpose of having a follow-on meeting after you've had the one-on-one?
Well, you know, when we used to do this with, you know, with one staffer present, which Trump didn't have, you would have the most sensitive conversation with just the leaders there. And then you would kind of go in, you would potentially read out that conversation to the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor and other officials.
There's a live shot of the extended bilateral.
Mr. Chairman, it's a great honor to be with you, and I know we'll have tremendous success together, and we'll solve a big problem, a big dilemma that until this point has been unable to be solved. I know that working together we will get it taken care of. Thank you. Successfully kicked off the capacity that weighs on everybody on our shoulders, and we are overcame and speculations about this historic summit, and I believe that this is equally defeated. I believe so.